Hello and welcome here. I promised you a version 2.0 of how to install your Raspberry Pi if anything breaks and so on. And the first part was if you had access to an external keyboard and a monitor. And now we'll try and see what we can do in case we do not have access to this. So let's get on with it and see how it looks. If we go down here and look at the Raspberry Pi, we can see that I have my SD card inside it here. Let me turn on some light here. And I will take this SD card out just like we did in part 1. And I'll connect it to my little SD card reader, and let's try and see if we can find our Raspberry Pi imager. On the imager, we're going to erase the SD card, choose the right one, and then I'm going to erase it just to be sure that there is no shadow image on it. And I'm going to once again go to Other and OS Lite, choose my card, and I'm going to write it. And just like when we did it on the part 1, we're going to speed this up a little bit. So the writing is done and the verifying of the SD card is almost done, and we are now ready to configure our little SD card. So let's try and see what's in the SD card. I will just take it out and I will find my file. 1 second. And then I will re-plug it again and let's see if we get any. Here is our boot partition. And now we would put in an empty file called SSH, removing the extension. That is very important. Windows is going to say, are you really sure that you want to remove the extension? And yes, I'm sure. When I put this empty file called SSH in the boot partition on the Raspberry Pi, when it reads it, it will enable SSH for our little system and enable the secure shell. We need to write a new file again. Let's new text document, and this time we will call it vpa_supplicant. For those of you who already know a little bit about your Raspberry Pi, you know that this is where the network settings are located. So yes, we want to change this. And now it's quite important that we have a little tool called Notepad++ installed. Let's try and see if we can find that. So if you don't have this Notepad++ install, go and install the latest release of it, and then we are ready to use it, because we need to make sure that this file is encoded in a special way. So I'm going to edit it with Notepad++, and when I have my little file here. And now that I'm ready to edit my file, I can go to the Raspberry Pi documentation, setting up Raspberry Pi headless, and here I can see how to write vpaSupplicant.conf example file here. So let me copy this one here, insert it here, and of course, as you remember, I need to put in my country code. So I'll put in DK for Denmark, and down here I will put in the name of my wireless LAN, my SSID. In my case here it's workshop 09, and then I'll put in my password here for my network. And then I will save the file and make sure that it's located. So now I have a new file down here, and what I need to make sure is up here in edit, end of line conversion, that it's set to Unix, and save it. And now my little SD card is ready for booting. So here we have access to our, so I will put in my SD card in my Raspberry Pi, and I will connect a screen. I know you don't have access to one, but this is just so that we can get an output here on our display here. So let me just see if it works, and I will connect power once again and turn on the power, and we should be able to see what the Raspberry Pi is doing when it's booting up, and that should give us a hint if it's possible, if it's allowed to connect to our network. So let's try and see. The Raspberry Pi is definitely booting up, and as you know, as you saw when you were physically at the school, if it receives an IP address, it will write it out to us in the boot script here. So it definitely started SSH, and I can see it started the vpaSupplicant file. So my guess is that, yeah, it found an IP address and it's ready to connect to. So what I can do now is that I can go to my PC, and I can find my advanced IP scanner, and then I can scan my home network, because you can't see what IP address, you couldn't see that output, but you can scan your network, and hopefully it will show up. A good idea if you're using advanced IP scanner is to go up here in view and don't show dead, only show alive. So it will only show the information that it can see on your network as of this scan here. And let's see what it finds, and hopefully it will find our Raspberry Pi. Yeah, I can see Raspberry Pi Foundation here, 192.168.1.212, and if I open my little PuTTY program here and enters pi at 192.168.1.212, it should say I have never met this one before, but yes, I'm comfortable that this is a server that I want to log into, and the password is Raspberry. And just to make sure, not IP, if config, let's see. Yeah, this is my Raspberry Pi, and if I go into the VPA supplicant.conf, I can see the file that I actually made in my boot partition. So now it is possible for me to connect headless to my Raspberry Pi. And I really hope that this video here, let me turn off. I really hope that this video here can help you if you stumble upon problems, or if you break your SD card and you need to set it up again without access to a monitor and a keyboard. Yeah.